Hi Andy, it's me again. I'm just bashing on with this. Um, Different bit of software I've got so I can scribble on it. I apologise beforehand that this might be quite lengthy, so whether you actually get around to watching it, I'm not sure. But I just thought I'd try and highlight the differences to what we talked about the other day and the Lesmahago stroke Queen Anne model. Up the top of the screen you can see is your current structure for your 5th and 6th year pupils who are doing higher or advanced higher. 6 periods, right? And I've split it up, 4 periods of big A, 2 periods of little a, and so on, right up to finally your 2 periods of core, okay? And what you have at the moment is that you wish for 4, 5, and 6 to have the ability to do 7 subjects, certainly 7 subjects for 4th year, and up to 7 subjects for 5th and 6th year as well. And that is organised so that your first 5 columns A, B, C, these ones A, B, C, D, and E, and then you've got 2 periods of F there, and 2 periods of F there, and 2 periods of G there, and 2 periods of G there. Okay, that certainly works fine for 4th year. As you talked about the other day, your problem, or one of your problems, is that core 5th and 6th year and core 4th year have come at the same time, so you can't get them all to PSE and so on. One of the disadvantages, the way we set it up, and there are disadvantages with it all different ways, so that is not to say this that you're going to change your way, is if I take column F, whatever you put in column F, and I know we talked about maths and English and so on, and I'll show you that on the next screen, it's definitely a 4-period column, which is fine for 4th year, but for 5th and 6th year pupils, whatever subjects you have in, say, column F there or column G there, because it's a 4-period column and because it mixes into with column A, any 5th and 6th year pupils who are in column F, if they're doing a higher in column A or column B, for instance, they cannot do column F. So if they're doing a higher in A but a National 5 in B, they would have to have a 2-period course. And we talked about that. And similarly with this column, if they were doing a higher in C, it would mean that they couldn't do a National in G, and vice versa. If they were doing a higher in E, they couldn't do a National in G. So that was one of the disadvantages of your system. And if you set it up like that in options, you will have to make sure, you'll have to check basically the pupils that are in column F there and there are not doing higher in A and B, and similarly with the pupils that are in column G, they're not doing higher in C or D. And if they are doing higher, and I would imagine you would want to have the priority and letting them do their higher, it means it's ruling them out of doing a national and they maybe have to do a 2-period course. You've got other things to consider. Minority subjects, it's always one, it's when you put it into options, it's sometimes hard to spot. But I don't know, for instance, at Lesmahago, small school, smaller than you, they've got one RE teacher, but they do offer certificate SQA, National 5 and a higher class. So obviously you couldn't have, for instance, higher IRE in column A and Nat 5 RE in column F, because that RE teacher is needed for all of those 6 periods. In other words, you've got to look out for that, and it tends to be your small departments that becomes an issue of where you place F in A and B and G and C and D. And I've placed columns F with A and B and G with C and D, but there's flexibility to move these around, as you know. Sorry, these screens are going to get messy, but I hope you understand that. I'm going to pause just to collect my thoughts again. Okay, moving on to what we talked about the other day of making your columns F and G only S4, right? And that was to get round the idea of core for 4, 5 and 6 coming all at the same time for 2 periods. You can see what I've done here. I've put core 4th here, and this is S4 core in there and in there. And that it really is S4, so that's not really S4, 5 and 6. Okay. And this, as we talked about the other day, could be S4 maths. Excuse my scribble, it's hard to write with one of these digital pens, and that could be S4 maths. And these 4 periods there could be S4 English. Now, your difficulty with that one is, can you afford to run maths and English classes purely for 4th year? Or maybe more importantly, do you have enough pupils want to do National 5 Maths or National 5 English in S5? Because that would mean S5, 6 Maths and English would have to fit in to A, B, C, D or E elsewhere for that to run. You've still got the same issues as we talked about before. If this here was 4th year maths, you'd probably have to make sure there was no higher or advanced higher maths in columns C and D. And similarly, if this was S4 English, you would probably want to make sure there was no 5th year, 6th year English classes in column E. Okay. So there's considerations. What's more important? Is it more important that you separate your core classes across 4, 5 and 6 from in your current model, or is it more beneficial you split your core? Your other issue with splitting your core, and I should have mentioned this, if core are going here and here, what are S5, 6 pupils who are national level doing here and here? Right? Because if they're going to core there and there, 5th and 6th year, need something in here. The ones that are not doing hires and something in here. Have you got enough classes to run, or enough pupils to generate a suitable size class for 5th and 6th year pupils only? Because those 2 periods at national level have to be 5th and 6th year only, and as well as those 2 periods, and indeed those 2 periods there. Okay, now that would tend to be, because that's really a standalone column that isn't tied in with the 4 periods, that's going to have to be a 2-period short course for any 5th, 6th year national pupils that are not doing higher in column E. Okay, I'm going to pause again. Okay, I'll gather my thoughts again. The Lesmahagow and Queen Anne model is just a variation on that. It's just set up slightly differently, as explained in the PDF that I sent yesterday. Now, that PDF can look quite daunting, but I can talk you through it if you felt you wanted to do it. Here I'm just trying to explain it a wee bit better. There's your current system, columns A, B, C, D, and E for your straight higher pupils, 2 periods at core. What the way that Lesmahagow High and Queen Anne, and as well as other schools, operate is that your higher columns are A and C, and these are combined because those 4 periods form column B for your national. And then D and F are combined because those 4 periods form column E for your national classes. So if you're an S4 pupil, you've got 4 periods of A, 4 periods of B, C, D, E, F, and G, and so on. And obviously, you've got 4 periods of core if you're a 4th year pupil, right? Again, it's the issue with 5th and 6th year national pupils. You've got the same issue. If there's a national 5 S5 pupil in here, they cannot be doing higher in A, they cannot be doing higher in C. Same here, if there's a national 5 S5 or 6 pupil in here, they cannot be doing higher in here, they cannot be doing higher in here. The PDF tries to explain how to set up the options software in the best way to gather the pupil's option if you thought that this was the method to go down. And I've talked about Lesmahagow and Queen Anne, but there are significant differences between Lesmahagow and Queen Anne, never mind the size of the schools. This is the Lesmahagow model from that PDF. You can see I've got S5 plus S4. So column A, 4 period column, so advanced higher, higher than that 4. And for those that are doing advanced higher, higher, there's little a, so that's your extra 2 periods, as you can see here. Or, indeed, you've got the combined little a, little c to join in with the 4th year National 5, and that's really called column B in CMIS, and it will be known as column B. It's a wee bit confusing here, right? But that works fine in Lesmahagow, but the one thing I should say, they've got the same issue as you. They've got 4th year core, 2 periods going with this standalone column, column G, and they've got 4th year core, 2 periods going with 5th and 6th year core. Now they can do that. They've got a good team of PSE teachers and so on who are keen to get involved in PSE, so they don't have an issue with that. This idea here I've mentioned, where you've got combined S4 and S5-6 National 4-5 classes, is the same here. They also combine their maths and English. Now, I think, if I remember correctly, in column A, that as well as other subjects, but there was maths national in here. So any 4th year or 5th and 6th year could do maths national. And I think, again, it doesn't really matter what column I'm choosing, but that was maybe where they put their English national classes. So in this column, you had all pupils who were in 4th year, 5th year, or 6th year are doing national. The hires were maybe somewhere else in some other columns. That worked because of the size of the school. It was different for Queen Anne. Queen Anne had its own peculiarities. The biggest peculiarity for Queen Anne was that the 4th year pupils continued their subjects they had chosen in 3rd year into 4th year. So there wasn't their 4th year didn't go into options. And they did not have the ability to run 4, 5 and 6 national classes together, and they wanted to separate core. Now you can see the knock-on effect here. The structure is exactly the same. 4 periods, 2 periods of A, 2 periods of C, really forming column B, and then the same 2 periods of D, 2 periods of E, really forming column E. But you've still got the same difficulties that you had to make sure, and that was the problem in the options. You're trying to use the option software for something it can't really fit 100%. But you could not have a 5th and 6th year pupil choosing a national in either of these two columns if they were choosing a higher in here or here, right? So a lot of thought had to go into the way the option software was created. You can also see another issue. Um, S4 Core was put against column D, right? So that meant that if there was any fifth and sixth year pupils who were following National 4-5, they were in a class on their own, fifth and sixth year pupils. There couldn't be any fourth year pupils in there. Um, have you got the numbers in your fifth and sixth year to be able to do that? Okay. Queen Anne, really big school, so they did half year groups for English and maths here and here. Top half, X half going to English, Y half going to maths. And for those 4 periods here and here, it was the other way around. You can see again at the advantage though of splitting your core fifth and sixth year away from fourth year. But again, that's if you were able to do that. Okay. Now, I've tried to not talk too much because I'm hitting you with a lot of information there. The PDF that I sent yesterday explains that hopefully in a bit more detail. But if you wanted to discuss this a bit further, Andy, more than happy to. I know we've penciled in a date, 1st of March. I don't know whether that's too late. Um, but get back to me with your thoughts. Yeah, we'll take it from there. And I'm going to stop there because I've been talking for a quarter of an hour already and you'll be getting fed up with me. So stop there and there'll be things I've missed on that brief explanation, but I'll definitely stop. Okay, cheers.